Greetings, ladies and mental gents, and welcome to my channel, where I like to make audio narrations of stories from across the internet. In this series, we'll be focusing on a web novel called There Is No Epic Lucha, Only Puns, from the website ReUpload. And in this video, we'll be doing chapters 103 to 105. I hope that you enjoy. There is no epic lucha, only puns. Chapter 103. Pop goes the slime. Poppy turned a page. Gently came a deep growl from the book. Poppy turned to the book around, and a blank expression met the cover of the book, where an etched face made of symbols and ink glared at her. Tom, I can't go any gentler. Waiting for a breeze to turn you is taking forever, yeah. Poppy sighed, and the book floated up of its own accord and shut at the same time. Most people would pay a kingdom's worth of blood and gold to peek at even one of my pages. He thundered and then sniffed. Reduced to a child's entertainment novel. How droll. He sighed and flopped back onto the bed. Poppy wanted to remind the book that it had done nothing but waste away the bookstore in the middle of nowhere for many years, but then decided it wasn't worth another lecture. Tom, or Tomb of Eternity, was a rather grouchy book at any given moment. Poppy sat on her bed and poked him. "Then how do I read you?" she asked, trying to put some actual curiosity in her voice, and she was due to a nap and couldn't help but yawn. "Magic, powerful energies that would let me reveal secrets to the user at appropriate strength. I highly doubt you'll have much luck." Tom began with enough smugness to make Poppy's classmate Grum look humble. Oh, Poppy could try that. She really wanted to read Tom. She stimulated the feeling of being big, marking the highest score on the exam, winning the race with Dio, finding the best skipping stones. Superiority. Power. No peer to be found. Her mouth cracked slightly as she grinned, with fangs, and her eyes went black and slitty glowing yellow irises. The feeling of being a queen of all monsters and more pitiful ants. She was a dragon with no equal. She slashed at a hand, and the book gave a yelp as it turned to the middle section filled with words. Poppy slowly began to push herself back to a calm state. Endless white, no hint of anything but just sleep and peace. She felt the heat fade and her manner popped like a soap bubble. She sniffed and eyed the curtains, which had turned into cinders as her bed looked blackened. Yeah, she'd have to go get a new one now. What in the dickens pose? I demanded a reasonable explanation for that. Tom questioned, voice high like a small boy. I ate a dragon tail once. My dad cooked it with spicy herb from a volcano, and it was nice, she shrugged. She leaned back in to read Tom's blustered and sputtering. Are you some blue mage? What kind of child gets access to those types of meals? He screeched, but Poppy was too busy reading. The pages were powerful monsters, almost like a bestiary, and it spoke of where and how to find these fearsome beasts, their abilities, what Poppy could gain from them. Boss, she sighed and turned to another page. Tom was mumbling to himself furiously. The next few pages came in, and it showed the human girl with a glare on her face. The page filled in as Poppy found herself disliking the girl for some reason that she couldn't quite understand. Beta. The monster that devours monsters, given the ability of purple magic with complete control. Poppy said, and she stared at the picture of the creature in human skin. Rather new addition, if I'm correct. Odd creature. Usually these things are not so sudden. The great king of monsters usually takes time to release the unnatural things into the world. Tom hummed. Poppy drew a moustache on Beta's face. Tom didn't even notice. Who's the king of monsters? She asked as she added curls to the face hair. He is the physical agent or brother of old. I would surmise that he is the first monster, and one that appears when monsters are pushed too far. It has been a long time since he has appeared, Tom admitted. You think a king would be kind of hard to miss, Poppy pointed out. Tom huffed. The king of monsters breaks down into mana and is reborn when the imbalance is skewed too far in either manner. Tom lectured. Poppy poked at the book. Show me what he looks like now. She poked harder. Tom huffed, but his pages turned. If he's even around, there is no promise that he... Oh, he is around. Tom's voice went odd. Poppy stared at the page. That is not a king. That's adorable. She smiled softly. An orange slime was rolling down a grassy hill bubbling in cheer and delight. It came to a stop in a bush of wildflowers. The slime bubbled as they danced in the wind. It giggled as a bee buzzed at it. It buzzed back, and its body shaking like jello, and the bee flew off, nonplussed. It hopped along the tall grass and hummed out the warbling off-note song. The path behind it burst slightly into beautiful flowers and grass as the imprinted manna left behind soaked into the ground. The little orange blob stopped as it stared up at the massive tree and dangling apples. Usually you're a bit more on fire and brimstone with lots of people screaming. A voice came from very far away. The blob turned and tilted so hard that it fell over. It gurgled and blew bubbles. True, the balance is sort of fine. I didn't expect you to be born as a slime, but you always were an odd duck. Malicus, the father asked. The slime thought about it and thought hard. It was weaving deaths and monsters and humans. The balance of the sword against claw. It was fire and blood. It saw where life should be stamped out new, and life the forest fire. It removed the old and gave away to new. But it also saw something else. A girl with a tie and bright eyes, laughter tempered by will. It bubbled and began hopping again. I'm not sure what that means exactly. The closest dungeon to educate would be Jarl, and I don't think he needs to... Actually, ignore that. You should totally do that. Father instructed. The slime bubbled cheerfully. In fact, according to your auntie, there is a group of people that you should use as meat shields. Well, let's call them helpers. You need to show them you're wise and not the end of all they know. See if you can lead them to well, you'll know when you get there. The little singing ball of slime made a comment. Getting feisty. Fine, you're the king. If you want to be called a jerk, go for it. His voice faded and the slime cheered in agreement. That's the tale of Mule, the little slime that could do a lot of damage. Brother hummed as he fished his hook out and naught to show for it. Did sister say to mess with the princess and Jarl or to leave them alone? At this crucial step of the dungeon human relationship understanding. He mused, he shrugged and stretched. I'm sure it was whatever I did. I'm always sort of right, he admitted. Skeletons in colourful clothes and makeup was a little distracting, which Dalton guessed was the point in their favour as performers. Red stars over empty eye sockets, clown smiles with no lips, leotards with no muscles or stretch to them. All of them did the same routine of dancing. It was like a workout video from hell that was on the bargain bin. Delta weakly applauded and a couple doing knife juggling. One went too far and fell right onto the empty ribcage where it rattled on the inside. Well, Delta guessed the workplace accidents would be pretty hard to come by. Rennie began to correct his forms for movements. He snapped at the skeleton who tried to climb a high wire with furious clicking at the safety net still rolled up. He pulled a confused skeleton out of the color cannon that had remained unlit. Delta was sure that he had done the mime any favors by unleashing these boneheads on him. But as she reached out, she blinked at the slightly glow around Rennie. He radiated annoyance, as expected, but there was also excitement and surprise. He felt busy for the first time in a long time, and Delta hid a smile and went to get his food stand ready. Since people would be arriving en masse from the second tunnel entrance, it would be a good place for the food to be sold. She spent the DP and formed the ground rose metal counters and swinging door. Mass formed together to give the rise of various jugs and coloured fruit juice and a quiet popcorn machine that was visible through the glass under the service counter. Behind, posters frames rose, and only one had anything in it. It showed the skeleton crew in a triangle pose, like cards stacked upon each other. There was a single line at the bottom. The circus run by a skeleton crew. Come tickle your funny bone. The fruit stand was to the right of the entrance that had red and green stripes everywhere that it could manage. The cash register was a grinning skull atop of the popcorn ad. Next to it was a little bit ominous. Delta's popcorn, it's to die for, or because of. But what was it even made of? Delta asked aloud and nearly shrieked as Sparrow answered her. The goblin had just appeared from under the counter like a damned ninja. What else? Mushroom bits and unspeakable horrors. The goblin grinned. Is it, going to kill people? Delta had to ask, for a slight hesitation was telling. Not a lot. Just the old or sickly, she said calmly. Delta glared at her and dragged her menu open. She scanned the menu and her finger found an option that she was looking for. Upgrade, upgrade, she chanted urgently. Upgrade popcorn to com. Upgrade popcorn to go. Upgrade popcorn to grey. Upgrade popcorn to undeaf. The popcorn-lit glass window began to give off a bright yellow glow. Delta blinked and the menu quickly said its message, as if panting to keep up. Popcorn has upgraded to unknown quality. Popcorn of the standard does not exist in the natural world. One bag is enough to change someone's life. Its cereal popcorn is now for sale. The local food deity gives the snack an 8 out of 10. Delta lifted a finger off the upgrade button and carefully closed the menu. She closed her eyes. Nothing bad will come of this. I didn't do anything weird or strange. It'll be okay, she said in a calming tone. Ferris snorted. You keep telling yourself that, she said, snacking the food and going a little glassy-eyed. Poppy blinked as her father paced in his kitchen. His wild-eyed and fingers trailed over many jars and tins that he had collected over the years. Dad, she asked as he spun, scary gleam in his eyes. Poppy, it has happened. I sense it. A powerful rival has created food beyond compare in this field. Tell your mother that I shall be, busy. He clapped his hands together and lighting the 4 stovetops in the room at once. Poppy closed the door and yawned. Dad is such a weirdo, said Tom, who was stuck under her arm. According to my pages, that man is a fabled demonic Ch. Tom almost squealed before Poppy cracked him open. Show me something cool, she said and settled into a good armchair. Oh, you... Fine, let's see. How about the Tale of Silver, the Fallen Dungeon? He offered, the tall spires silver forming on the blank page. Sounds depressing. Anything happy? She asked and looked at the photo on the wall that showed her friends, Amista and Dio. How it made her feel, not as blank. Well, let's see. How about the tale of the Black Witch that fell in love? He asked. Poppy thought about it and then nodded. Once, in the dark forest where only evil and cruelty would grow, there once was a witch with thorns. Poppy settled in and listened as Tom indulged her. One day, she fought a knight of Glutton and was badly injured, and that was when the man who had gotten lost by following the robin found her. She growled, "End me, or you shall be dead very soon," Tom said in a horribly voice acting. The man said with no fear, "I cannot die twice, for you already have taken my heart from my chest with your enchanting looks." The story went on and Poppy wondered what kind of dysfunctional couple this was. Tom went on about the witch guarding some dungeon and the man nearly dying from her, but Poppy drifted off to sleep before long. Tom didn't seem to notice at all. "Thank you, Rudy," Mr. Dabagos beamed as Rudy handed him a cut flowers with a glower. "No problem, how's the family?" she asked Mr. Dabagos, looking even merrier. "You know Holly, absolutely mad over a garden. Now that the manor levels, let her grow some, interesting things." He flushed. He hummed as the sounds of childish fighting erupted above. "The kids are kids. My eldest is currently floating between being a tree or a person. Teenagers." He laughed and Rudy gave him an odd look, but wasn't sure that she was equipped to handle this line of conversation. "Trees are pretty, tall," she said weakly, and Mr. Dabagos nodded and leaned in. "I'm sorry to bother you. I know that you're busy, but you wouldn't happen to know any talking trees. My eldest is nervous, and Holly is taking very teacher-like approach, but I'm a softie, and I wouldn't mind trying to get her support." He asked quietly to make sure that his wife didn't hear. "Well, there's one in Delta's joint, but—" Rudy was cut off by Mr. Dabagos's face lit up. "Really? Oh, that's fantastic. I need to go tell my daughter," he said excitedly as the door shut. Rudy still had her hand up in protest. "She's kind of a nut job," she said in a defeated tone. She paused and then scowled. "That damned orange bird. Nut job. She's a murder tree and I'm making puns." She sighed. "I hate quests." She turned and walked off. Delta was good to people. She would control the demon tree. Rudy wanted a drink, and she wanted it now. Her mother would know that she had skipped on the other tasks before Rudy even made it 10 feet towards the pub. She wished that she had a way to do tasks and drink. "Hi, Miss Ruli," came the voice of the boy that could be told to do anything. Ruli smiled and slowly turned to Dio. "Ah, my little helper," she beamed and leaned in. "How would you like to borrow an epic sword for some mighty questing?" she asked, and Magma began to steam in protest. "Shut it, and I'll get you cheese later," she hissed, and the sword went quiet again. "I would love to help. I'll get all my friends to help as well," Dio said, red hair bouncing and a smile turned up to 11. Perfect. It was like bribing one minion to get 3 for free. "Dio, your heart is too pure for your own good. For the good of mankind," Rudy said solemnly. Well, she was half demon. Her nature had to kick in sometime outside of battle. Taking advantage of innocence was just one of those ways. Delta carefully stepped back inside of Ferris seemed to vanish into a trapdoor that took her back up to the first floor. Delta tried to peer inside, and the space that had been twisted to be almost backwards stared back in tears. She didn't know what else to do, so she threw some popcorn into the darkness and whirled the trapdoor to shut itself before the distant burp echoed into the darkness between floors. Rennie finally had some skeletons doing some basic routines, and Delta had to admit the ghoul was good at it. The skeletons didn't speak, or neither did Rennie. It was really quiet in the tent, besides the clatter of bones and Rennie's finger snapping. It was bad enough that the visuals were hard to look at. The sound didn't have to be so spooky. She flushed some DP on Maestro and waited for the shaking earth or ear splitting apart, or maybe even Maestro rising up from the shadows in his new form. But instead, Delta watched as a thin paper barrier was lowered from the ceiling on unseen ropes and pulleys, and then the shadow of the door opened on the far side and lights light up and gave a clear profile of Maestro climbing up to a small platform. His insect-like limbs had barely visible chittering mouth made Delta's neck hair stand up in goosebumps. Did someone call for a romance to their ears? I, the forever dashing star, have answered the call, but it's so sad for the children it shows to come. I am behind the paper wall. If they wish to see my full gloriness, they'll just have to find me properly. He laughed, and tooting his horns sounded out with the jingling bells. Rennie walked over and vanished behind the screen before his form stopped for a moment and Maestro's purr of the voice sounded out. Even the cool soul of Rennie can't stop admiring my elegance now. Now, we have a job to do. Maestro leaned down to Rennie. The mime nodded jerkily and staggered back out of the screen towards Delta. "I warned you," she said blankly. Rennie just stood there as Maestro made a haunting pipe organs breathe and jump in beat like a heart monitor. "This is Maestro," he cackled, and the strum of the electric guitar made the skeletons shuffle in unison. "Come on now, boys and girls of every age, would you like to see something strange?" Maestro's voice went high and in demonic glee. The skeletons' eyes glowed with a supernatural red, as if the music gave them power. 2 began to flip and land in unnatural grace. Another one landed on the shoulder of another before they were launched to a seesaw into a barrel. Delta wished that she could hug Rennie and cover her eyes, but the scene, while making her shake, mesmerized her. Something about the antics of the show captured her eyes, the horror of the performing turning into the existence into art. Delta saw Rennie wanted to control them or direct them, but they seemed more in tune with the music than his own commands. Delta could fix that. She opened a menu and tapped him. "I can make you the ringleader if you'd like," she offered. She didn't want to push the upgrade on the mime without his agreement. Rennie pulled outside so that they could have more space and silence to hear each other. She repeated a question, and Rennie froze. The pale face turned slowly until he was staring fully at the memorial statue of his father that Delta had made for him. Under the many glinting starlight mushrooms that acted as stars, the statue looked mysterious, if not gentle. He wandered over to it and stared up at the stylish moustache with excited eyes, touched the top hat grasped in the man's left hand and held onto it like the side of the statue. "I think he'd be happy to know that you carried on his legacy, but you shouldn't feel trapped by it either." Delta told him, and the mime turned to her and closed his eyes. Delta felt a small tug as the contract bond between them seemed to vibrate with his feelings. Conflicted hope, sadness, fear. Delta saw Rennie's father in her memory, and she looked out at Rennie's eyes as the much younger ghoul stared up at the man. He was handsome and had a wicked gleam in his eyes that promised adventure and stories to tell for years to come. He seemed to put his top hat on Rennie's head and nearly swallowed Rennie's head due to being too big. "You are my son. Be it a ringmaster or a free soul, I shall be here." He tapped Rennie's chest and irradiated with warmth through Rennie. The ringmaster then picked up his son. "Come, we must see the new snake charmers. I heard that being half snake lets the woman dance like no other. Charms the tips out of the crowd, no doubt." The memory was strong and Delta had to blink away the sudden wetness in her eyes as Rennie looked back at his father. "He was a great man," she said with a little doubt. Rennie nodded and then turned to her. He got down on one knee and did a one-armed bow at the same time. His wide grin revealed back gums and teeth stretched wide. It said as clear as day, "Do your worst." No backouts. She laughed and hit the upgrade button. The flash of light swallowed Rennie, and even the circus stopped its music for that moment. It seemed to breathe in as assenting its new proper master. Delta squinted until the light finally faded away, and she had to give a long whistle. "Rennie, you look like a showman," she laughed in delight, clapping her hands. Rennie rolled his new black top hat down his arm before bouncing it with his wrist up to his head. The cane he leaned on had a crystal mushroom adorned at the top of it. His dark red jacket was crisscrossed with orange buttons and string. His dark pants and shiny shoes made him look like he had stepped out of a ballroom. His face had a dark fibers that acted like hair for ghouls, trimmed as though tidy into facial hair like his father. His beady eyes remained, and the grin Rennie had now could pass off as human if you ignored the star-like rose that glinted in the low light. Stretched out his arms and gave Delta a full smile, and Delta twitched. It was like a gaping maw of fangs and black flesh. "Let the show begin." He howled, and the tent behind him erupted into light and music, his new temporary power-up already fading without a show to keep the ringleader persona going. Rennie would be a mime again soon. Still, his voice was captivating and would draw anyone's attention. Delta wished it the customer's luck. She also needed to get New to make some legal waivers for customers to sign, because this was not going to go well. She gave a good-natured sigh. At least Rennie was happy, and that's all that mattered to Delta. End of chapter. There is no epic lucha, only puns. Chapter 104, Spring of the Soul. Delta left the deliriously happy Rennie to whip his new performers into shape. She walked past the snoozing Wilhelm and back into the jungle in time to see the tiny, scampering pygmy mushrooms running by with the new popcorn in their hands. She cleared her throat. The three little creatures froze and looked up at her with wide, round eyes. Their masks turned to the sides to allow them to better rub the popcorn against their faces. "Are you lot causing trouble again?" she asked, voice intentionally blank. One squeaked and hopped a few times. The middle one squealed as well, and Delta knew while they didn't have mouths, they were able to sort and toot the air in caps and compressed spaces to make noises. It was like passing gas, but done conversationally. "And you have no intention of luring poor folk off the path with popcorn?" she asked as their words translated in her mind. But if the cute fonts or mind-numbing teeth-cracking horror, Delta could hold conversations with any of the monsters at this point. The pygmies explained how they wanted to collect the golden balls of deep desire for the tribes and share it with their new friend. They raised alarm bells until they described he of the golden fibers and fire. Delta's alarm bells turned into whistles and groans at the thought of Chris interacting with her adorable little devils. These little guys were the biggest troublemakers in her dungeon, and she had goblins. But the fact that they were bonding with Chris showed a remarkable improvement over their previous behavior. Delta guessed it paid to have a firm with them at times. She let them go, and they vanished into the distant underbrush, with more singing out of the caps. How could something so cute cause so much trouble? Delta honestly wasn't sure that she'd ever make something that would rival their cuteness, or their penchant for mischief again. Mule watched as the forming, murderous giant wolf bared its teeth at him. The domain it had set up gave it power and minions to control like puppets. It had yet to form a proper intelligence, but Mule goggled at it. It was Fluffy. Delta would have liked Fluffy, but he was picked up and flung off by the Master Wolf and tried to rend him blob from blob. Mule waited until he was sure that the creature was confused, and then formed two black eyes and blinked right into the wolf's red ones. He goggled. No, this Fluffy was no good. It had too many seeds in it. Another domain gone wrong. That's why dungeons were so easily much better. Delta would have made so much cooler wolf than this was nice. Mule's orange body shifted, and he left the happy piece of himself that Delta had created to be overtaken, protected by his true nature, something he hoped to slowly introduce to his Delta pool of mana. It was definitely odd to have two selves, but it was also a new experience. Mule didn't get to feel those all that often. The thought faded as a new emotion surged forward. His black, beady eyes snapped open and the red slit cut its way down the black orbs. The eyes of the king stared out at the beast holding him. His body turned red and grew, breaking the wolf's fangs by sheer mass of its weight. Damulecus rose and rose until he was king once more. He then removed the small forest, and a few moments later Mule chirped as he hopped out of the sizzling wasteland of heat and blackened trees. His shrinking orange form once more. He had a new goal now. Find a Fluffy. That one was nice. It was good to have goals. Delta was glad that the pygmies were the worst of her troublesome creatures besides Wyam. While the tree woman seemed calmer, the bloodlust of hers seemed to bubble to the surface a lot. She froze as the stalls of mana and DP sharply rose and new popped into existence. What did you do? We just got an energy from kills. Delta gaped at him. I didn't do anything. I only made a supernatural popcorn and created a circus of the damned. I'm innocent, she cried in her defense. Mana pumped into making more random rocks and hanging vines with blossoming flowers nearby to make sure that she didn't get too close to the upper limit. Mana maxing sucked. I'll ask Sis. No, wait, I got an update. Sis said that it's nothing to worry about. She said brother sent someone to mop up some rogue domains and had no use for their seeds himself, and he had plenty of resources, so he donated them to the cause. This brother seems mighty efficient. Perhaps we can swap siblings. New was turned into a horrid shade of neon pink. He trolled in alarm. I was jesting, put down the glitter backdrop program. New was spinning in panic, and Delta didn't do anything, as he deserved taunting from the system herself. New was reserved to his preferred blue, and deflated, shrinking to a small window as if he'd been scalded. You're going to say something wrong to her one day and be forced to speak in rhymes for the rest of yours. Don't mock or tease the powerful, not God children. They're nice, but they know how to get revenge, she said. Aren't you knowledgeable about the vengeful siblings? Well, I did have a younger brother, she beamed. New screen went blank and Delta was about to ask if something was wrong. Her words died as her mind replayed her own words, so innocently spoken. I have a younger brother. I have a younger brother. Younger brother. Young brother. Brother. I had a brother. Breathe. Breathe. Focus on my words. New screen was right before her face and the light made it into darkness at the sight of her vision fade a little. Have a brother. She gasped and the dungeon suddenly felt too cramped. It was as if no matter which way she turned, she saw walls and no way out besides the white barrier in her entrance. She struggled to breathe before she let her mind dungeon a little. The detached version of her dungeon pulse was able to filter out the chaos for a moment. She had no idea what had happened. Why was she suddenly remembering things? She moved, not bothering with flying, and instead commanded herself to the core room. Her pedestaled orange orb was still where she had left it. The sea of orange looked the same until she glimpsed something. A small mote of white. It seemed to swirl like a snowflake. Frowning, she turned to the dungeon sensors on her core, and the sheer complexity of the sight was staggering. It was as if a dungeon was flowing lines of numbers and perfectly structured motes of orange mana. Her core was a little white hole. It exploded out with waves of pulsing orange, a liquid so thick in this room that it made it hard to see her own hand in front of her face. It seeped into the walls, where it was siphoned off to the countless processes needing the energy. Delta's core was thousands of interwoven lattices of thin crystals and symbols, each one pulsing in time with a rhythm, giving the overall core the appearance of something alive, a heart that falls of the brain, the shell holding a being. The white snowflake bounced off a symbol, and it seemed to jolt a single symbol on another layer. Delta felt like her head was pounding, but she focused on the white mote. It was Rennie, her mime. The mote was that scene that had shared over the bond, the scene of love and endless affection for his father. It had formed a physical aspect in Delta's core for a moment and was breaking down every second it bounced around. The flakes jolted a lone symbol that looked like a sideways W, but the ends were twisted. She looked at the symbol, and under the crackle of orange mana, there was a faint hint of white. Like the sea of bed under the ocean, the flickering memories of siblings that rose from those. Delta tried to grab the symbol or do something, but she was utterly unable to affect her own core. The memory was fading. While she would have the information of her brother, the memory linked to him would be buried once more, and Delta couldn't stop it. It was painful. Her mind buzzed, and there was a soothing noise, like an echo of a voice on the wind. Delta snapped her head up as a mana was weaving by someone unseen, and the core began to open like a lotus flower. The world felt very odd at the moment as the complex core was blooming before her eyes. Delta felt peaceful and serene as the being she now knew was Sis manipulated the ruins, and the symbol she was after rose like an island to the outer surface of the core. It blazed white and then slowly orange. The core released itself. The memory was back, and it wasn't fading, and a window emerged at her side. By reaching a high-level bond with your contract Rennie, you were able to unlock a fraction of yourself. The system has been able to solidify the rising piece and reattach it firmly to your core. This process must not be rushed or tinkered with. The loss of one symbol could create a chain reaction and cause rapid corruption. Thank you. How do I do that? Delta tried to hug the window. Sis just helped her save her memory. Nu took over, his blue screen shade appearing over the orange box. You can unlock your memories by allowing powerful feelings or sensations or memories to be given to you. This is most easily done through contracts. Normal monsters cannot give you this, as they lack any outside influence to cause pieces to stand out for now. The system has no reward. I don't need them. Just having myself back, even slowly, is amazing. Thank you. The both of you. Delta laughed and Nu looked lost at what to say in return. Here, let me show you, she said with a big, bright smile. She used the weird pushing sensation of her dungeon powers towards the menu and the system. A flash of a young boy, his features blurry and hard to see, appeared. I don't want carrots, so you can have them. You like them, the boy said, lying through his teeth but trying to play it off as cool. Delta fell in step with the leading her to the core, laughing and crying. Her head hurt but her chest felt heavy, had a lone memory. Delta would never forget it. He seems like a proud brat. Delta snapped her head up and covered her mouth with a burst of delirious giggles. Nu went quiet for a moment. Sis is happy for you. Her cooing and noises are like drowning fish, make me assume that she's crying like a sap. Hurrah! Wait, Sis would like to share something back. Delta blinked, oddly, as her vision went dark and she found herself on the plane of flat darkness. Up and down had no exact relation to this place. Delta watched as two things moved ahead. It was like a spiraling galaxy that turned on its axle, and then the end to end, at the beginning of all. Delta saw the potential and destruction. The two shapes abruptly shifted to a small girl and a familiar smoking boy. The pressure at Delta's mind eased off at the same time, like the sight that she had been looking at should not have been seen directly. The boy was brother, and Delta turned to the girl with the white, simple cotton dress, who was sniffling sadly. That had to be Sis. I won at the guessing the number. You really have to stop picking 10. The boy chided. The girl wiped her eyes. It's the first two-digit figure. It's cute, she said sadly. Well, that means I get to create the next monster. Bro announced, and the blackness below Delta folded out the show of the world below. A long beam of energy was surging up to the moon above the several long streams. Emerging from the flat world below were several locations. The two siblings were hovering somewhere between. I think a double-headed lion that shoots ice and fire could be awesome. Or maybe a snake with a head at one end instead of a tail. Bro rubbed his hands eagerly. He slowed his smile and sniffed again. He rolled his eyes, looked again, and grunted. Actually, I think a rabbit would be so cool. He gritted his teeth and forced each word out, but Sis seemed rather oblivious to the falseness and looked up at him with her yellow eyes alight with joy. Too, I want to have a unicorn rabbit, she pleaded. The name made Bro twitch as if he was tasting something vile. Horned rabbit would be fine, I guess, he said, and they grasped each other's hands and they began to shape a form. Delta never got to see the end result of this vision ended. Bro is such a big brother, she smiled, and Lou shuddered, shaking off the last of Sis's powers. She must have used him to transmit the vision to Delta. Are you going to sit and grin at yourself all day, or do you have something else planned? Her surly friend asked. Delta hummed as she thought about it. How's the third floor? Any changes? She inquired, and Lou took a second to answer. Some attempts of breaking your symbols, but nothing of note yet. The empty space of the lab needs something added in, but that can wait until you've enjoyed your day off. The gargoyles are standing guard and the two trolls, along with Jack. I have little fear of anything trouble cropping up. The news was pleasing. Let's go see what the hidden jungle garden is doing. Delta decided and left her core, humming and feeling like the world was bright and lovely once more. Everything was horrible. Shinina filled another tankard as deadly boss Sir Fran did his best to outdrink the smoking swar. The fire goblin had been exploding the fortress room and came in boasting about how he was the true dangerous goblin in the dungeon. Fran was nearby and decided that he couldn't let that slide. So, for some reason only known to the goblins, they tried to drink each other under the table. The problem was that they drank so fast. Shinina had to rush back and forth like a rabbit to fetch the drinks, wash mugs and handle the other orders as Lady Farah cooked and handled the other floors. Another! Fran roared. Face purple, his cute little pig friend snorted and gave off a massive passing of gas that made the dangerously evil-looking Billy, the ranger goblin, pass out in shock since he was right behind the pig. Shinina had learned to use a rag as a mask to pass through the cloud and slammed more ember whiskey down at the table. It was some concoction using actual ground fire crystals. That stuff was potent enough to kill a human if ingested, and they would burn if they didn't simply die from the poisoning. She had no idea how Farah made it drinkable, or smell of cherries. Honestly, both facts made Shinina more afraid of the female goblin. Between the forbidden shroom pop and the series of drinks that looked so much like failed potions, Shinina hoped that the spa wouldn't get anything more dangerous to serve. It was playing havoc on her nerves. She ran back and forth and stopped to give the deep sniff and a half sob at her fate. The room went deathly silent. The next thing she knew, she was in a chair, and Fran was looking into her eyes, his purple cheeks at odds with his firm eyes. My lady, please forgive us. I had become too wrapped up in our game to see that harm that we were doing. He began, and Swar opened his mouth with a smirk before Fran lightly pushed the back of his neck and made him bow his head enough to be bounced his nose off the floor. I apologize. Now let go of me. The fiery goblin hissed, and Fran sighed. Making a lady and will find Sir cry is something the mother would absolutely detest. I am to be better than that. Please do allow me to cover for you for a break. Madame Farah would not protest as you are legally entitled to an hour's break in your shift. Fran nodded seriously. I get breaks here? Nina asked. All the goblins shared a look. We have legal rights? Swar asked in more alarm and dismayed by the news. Feel free to waive your own, to continue your right to explode stuff, Ran said dryly. This seemed to cheer up the fire-loving goblin greatly. I am not sure I should... Shinina began, but Fran was already behind the bar. I've seen Farah do this many times. Sure, a boss of my skill can do this all as well. He began and then grabbed the bar wiper and then cleaned chemical and the bottle of the burning shots called Goblin Tears. Surely the more types of one drink is the better, he mused, and the glass that he had begun to fill with many types of drinks began hissing like an animal while it filled. She had a bad feeling about this. The garden had been busy. Delta stared in awe at the sheer wall of life. She moved through the bundles of flowers, plants and fruit, and the other things all flourished over the manor vent. A vent that must have reached Brother's stolen eye somehow and leaked to the surface. The garden took some excess mana from you when you were overfilled from the Spider Queen to help out. It may have been many days ahead of expectations. New offered as he too took in the scene. Anything of note? Delta asked, and New went quiet for a while as he sorted through the recent logs. Delta took in the time to enjoy the scenery and move about. A sprees of many flowers, some weakly magical, but they've already begun to seed out in the jungle due to the bees. Some herbal remedies. Numbing tulip, a flower whose sap can numb the skin on contact. His medical uses. Happy sunflower seeds. Seeds of grown happy sunflower causes general good moods, can be addicting if overused. Dream root, a root that causes drowsiness. Energy root, a root that is grew inside out, has the opposite effect of dream root, may cause days of sleeplessness if overused. Buttercup, petals melt above the room temperature into butter, used to attract insects during summer, but it is utterly low in saturated fats or artificial flavorings for all of the health nuts out there. Delta bloom. She snapped her head at the box in excitement. I have a flower named after me. She beamed, and her mood was even brighter. She turned and looked for it, despite the fact that she had no idea what it was. Delta bloom, an orange poppy that smells of wet fungi, infects other breeds of flowers, causing mutations. If consumed and distilled into large quantities, it may do the same to beasts or people. Delta froze, looking straight down at the small patch of orange buds that had no flowers growing around them within a foot radius. Bad mutations or cool ones like in the comics? She asked in a small voice. Unknown with our test subjects, may I suggest poisoning the local water supply and observing the results? No, she said with an appall in her voice. I'm just joking. The flowers seem to mingle by pushing mana into nearby life forms. It would take years of contact to cause any real change to the location. If consumed, the human body would purge it naturally if they didn't keep drinking it. It would be equivalent to rub-on tattoos. Harmless. Delta knew her luck was both too bad and too good for this to be harmless. How harmless, she pressed. There is only one way to find out. He told her and Delta and felt bad for a moment when she agreed. It was a little mean. The question of who was the strongest goblin on average at the base strength had been answered by the time Delta appeared in the bar. Farah threw Fran into the wall with a scowl. She marched over and dragged the terrified boss monster back to his feet and in the center of the room. You wasted valuable drinks and mixtures. You wasted my personal mix. You created things that I had to burn. She yelled and Fran reached for Bacon for help, but the pig was too busy trembling under the table to see his master's fate. Delta stared at the chaos as the shell-shocked Nina looked haunted by something that she had seen, and one side of the room looked like something had violently burned into it. Trails of crusty slime coated the stone. Farah turned to Delta and huffed. You want a test subject? Fran just volunteered, she growled, and the boss shot Delta a pleading look for help. Is Fran sure? Delta asked after a moment. Farah nodded. He is. I'm sure he's eager to help out as compensation, she said tightly, as her first floor boss monster nodded in defeat, not wanting to say anything that could draw attention to himself. Delta decided not to get in the middle of goblin politics. She created some of the Delta blooms when Farah took a great delight in mixing with what little drinks that she had left. The result was a spicy orange drink that fizzed. Bottoms up, Fran, she grinned darkly. Fran, never one to shy away from a challenge, took it and downed it in one gulp. I didn't have a chance to look at it, Delta said, and was worried she was about to see her first four blasts explode. Fran smacked his lips a few times. I don't feel any... Urgh! He hacked suddenly and shuddered violently as his eyes began to bulge in surprise. He grabbed his head in surprise, and Delta was about to try and help him when Fran did explode. with hair. His bald head suddenly began to flow with long golden locks that weaved and danced until it reached his lower back. The hair was the purest of gold that moved in the wind that didn't exist. My goblin just mega evolved into Fabio Goblin, Delta shrieked. Fran gingerly touched his head and followed the trail down. I think getting into a helmet will be a bother now, he admitted. Farah was grinning like a hoon. Fran the knight who swoons the maidens' hearts. Be sure to pluck a few from my cooking. She cackled, and Fran turned to Nina, who was staring in wonder. I'm sorry my own hair is now longer than yours. I mean no insult, he said apologetically. Delta needed a drink. None taken, it's very pretty, Nina said in a weird voice. Delta decided that she would just take some shots instead. End of chapter. There is no epic loot, only puns. Chapter 105. Delta's Day Off. Fran didn't keep his Fabio hair. It had faded as New promised, but oddly the goblin actually seemed to be a little sad to see it go. Nina left after a while, as Farah deemed her first day amusing. Delta wished the girl luck as she headed off with a pouch of random herbs, mushrooms, and a fruit as a day payment. Delta really needed some kind of official currency to work with. She had the first floor a quick check over, making sure Maestro was still peachy with his new form before she turned to her goblins. Hob and Gob had been pretty much just gathering things, but they seemed to be bored than ever. New job, the two of you. She grinned, and the two siblings shared a look, and they seemed eager. Grab some random things around the dungeon and take them to Durance. See if you can sell them or trade things. Listen to Quiz or Rudy if you do not know what to do. You are to follow the law and not steal anything, she instructed. Gobbos to become merchants. Gob was interested. Honest merchants, Delta agreed. Not sure to make lots of money being honest, Hob admitted. Morally honest, Delta amended. No ripping off poor hummies, no selling slaves, and no drugs unless approved by the local government. Gob listed. Delta stared. We learn from Delta. Ideas come into head sometimes. Hob beamed. Delta was glad that she didn't have to teach goblins how to better humans, and then a lot of humans. She focused on the slow formation of wheels came into existence. Give me a moment to get this right, she said cheerfully. We want a sign as well for the shop, Hob yelled, and Delta nearly added the Mobius strip of the cart instead of a wheel in surprise. Like what? She said. The goblin shared a look. Durance had seen a lot of things. It was the epicenter of weirdness, most residents would admit. There were warriors of great renown, wizards of many forbidden and bizarre arts, many monsters passing as human, and even things that didn't bother trying. Durance was weird, so it was not every day that people stopped in the street to stare at something. Come and see Hob and Gob's bits and bobs, fresh dungeon loot without having to dungeon. Come, spend your human items for great dungeon treasure. The small goblin yelled, waving an orange flag with a weird triangle on it. The cart had been loaded out with the growing orange ruins and blazing with the same triangle symbol. The large pile of mushrooms, flowers, jars of honey, and raw fish were on display. The cart itself had a sleeping duck on the one side. It had a little sash that said, Security. There was a silence broken only by the excited yell of a child carrying many flowers of his own, being followed by a shell-shocked girl in a cloud robe and an amused giant woman known as Rudy. Delta's friends, is it? I, Dio, welcome you to my home. I am glad that you finally came to visit. The boy beamed and the goblins waved at him lazily. Yo, Delta sends regards and gives all previous good dungeon delvers 50% off for the first purchase. The goblin said with a greeted. Quiz is going to blow a lid when he sees this. Rudy grinned at the duck. The people watching quickly shuffled off to those words. The local peacekeeper had a temper not many like to encourage. I'll take all your fish. What do you want for them? Rudy asked the newcomers. They shared a look. One thing of worth, one of them tried to offer weakly. Rudy pursed her lips. You're gonna need help. Stay here and don't sell anything. I'll go grab Smalls and Happy. She sighed, and Dio looked up. Who's Happy? He asked, still holding all of the flowers and items for Rudy. At the name, all the nearby businesses shut their windows, closed their curtains, and Rudy looked at the quiet street. Happy is a merchant of death. He's the kind of guy that turns family-owned bakeries into multi-city monstrous factories of product. she said dryly. He sounds helpful. Theo beamed once more. He just has some quirks that makes him pain to get involved with. But I owe Delta for the cool sword I have now. Rudy said seriously. What kind of quirks? How items need to be used more sooner than later. Brother Hop here thinks maybe 2 days max, the other goblin announced. Happy tends to, be excitable about everything, Rudy said with a pained voice. The goblin shared another look, but everything went quiet as Quiz turned the corner and froze. The duck on the cart opened one red eye. You, Quiz said with a heavy tone. The duck stared straight back. They'll be fine. Waddles is scary enough to handle most things. I'm sure that my gobs will be perfect gentlemen, Delta said to an unimpressed Farah. And I am a dainty princess locked in a tower, Farah said bluntly. Delta could give her that. Things would go wrong, but Delta was lucky. It would go wrong in the best way possible. The circus is on its way. The secret garden is doing just fine. Maestro and Wyme have got a shiny new upgrade. I don't know what I should do next, Delta mused. It's your day off. Why do anything? Fran asked, and he flicked his hair. He had drunk another Delta surprise shot, as Farah had dubbed it. It was funny now, especially when his steed, Bacon, had the same flowing locks on his own head. Maybe because they were one unit, they shared the same mutation. Like, if there were any challenges, you'd turn them down because you had your day off, Delta teased. Fran flicked his long locks with a smirk. A warrior work is never done, he said casually. Farah placed her hand on the counter and leaned in. How about giving old Farah a tune-up? I got 3 food areas to manage in only 2 hands. Maybe see what the girls can have to aid her. The bartenders hummed and Delta nodded, blushing a little. She had dumped a lot of work on her recently. Delta focused on Farah and opened up her specific menu. It had a lot of options. Farah, room guardian of the tavern, manager of the food hall kitchen, manager of the snack stand circus, bartender, cleaner, head of hiring, goblin disciplinary committee. That was just her titles. Delta gaped for a moment before she quickly checked the rest of the box. Allow Farah's dishes and pots to be enchanted to self-work and clean when inside the kitchen and out of view of outsiders. Gained from book discovered in the library, 10 DP. Which one was that new? She asked brightly. The art of creating automatic killing swords and other sharp instruments. The spell was adapted after some work, sadly, to fit much better in the line for this work. Right. Dark cult library. I shouldn't expect romance novels or cheesy hero books, she sighed, and New blinked once. More of those than you think. Oddly, Jack built an odd altar to them and a crude drawing of someone's mother in a bathrobe. I think it's a woman, but hard to tell with Jack's art. We shouldn't judge Jack's religion. Anyway, she said and went back to the impatient-looking Farah. Allow Farah to hire, read as force, other goblin types to take on her job and gain half of her skill for an hour, 20 DP. Any food or drink made by Farah rises in rank of quality up to a certain level, 15 DP. In an attack mode, all goblins in the same room give Farah a boost in power. Farah may gain abilities from each goblin. Fire from Swar, Brawling from Numb, and even Fran's boss's powers, 40 DP. Allow Farah deep knowledge of coffee brewing using energy roots and other similar ingredients, along with egg frying, perfect bacon, and fish, 20 DP. Learn a rune from the delightful gentle soul that is Farah by summing up her being in an image, 5 DP. Delta was at a loss. Ran was supposed to be her scariest goblin, and Farah here was angling for Super Boss. She meekly purchased the enchanted helpers and the breakfast combo for now. Some help and coffee for Farah to brew for herself to make sure that the goblin didn't rebel for a pay raise or hold her core hostage for a pure Farah rage. I can learn a rune from you. I'm sure it won't hurt, Delta requested. Farah was already mixing things in a grinder. Sure, Ma, I can already hear dishes cleaning themselves and stew stirring on its own. Do whatever you like. This goblin is one happy cookie. Farah grinned, and she met Delta's eyes with a Delta saw. Under the gruff and scary layer, there was another tougher and crusty layer. But below that one was a soul that truly loved Delta. Promise me you won't be super boss and take over the dungeon if people annoy you too much. She asked, and Farah crossed her arms. I make no such promise. I will try not to remove so many heads from my wall, but that's all I promise when it comes to idiots, she said, and went back to grinding coffee beans, or something that looked like coffee beans. Shrugging, Delta purchased the ruin. Farah flashed before her eyes, and Delta seemed to meld into the goblin for a moment. Farah. What was the Farah, though? Tough, grouchy, even maybe a little mean. Farah disagreed all of those words and broke the nose of the one saying them. Farah was pure, blunt self-love and confidence in one's own home. To be Farah is to be proud. There is no greater insult to Farah than to look down on her work or insult her mother. Farah's heart was stone, but inside were veins of love for her family, golden rich and of the highest purity. But her love was her own treasure. It was not a bauble for others to admire or pluck. Farah's love for her home was the very existence. Food to be made, idiots to calm down, guests to assure. Farah did these things with pride and ease because she was created as the hearth to the swarm family. She would burn those who would dare to try to take them. Delta snapped back to her own head in a daze as New gave her a nudge. Rune created, Farah's light, a flickering rune that gives warmth and ease to those in range. If powered to the max, may cause a radius of intense light, which will cook foes. Rune cost of the basic light, 10 mana. Rune with full light ability, 50 mana. Farah she's a good goblin, Delta finally said, and one of Farah's ears flicked, and she said nothing to indicate she heard this. Delta smiled to herself and floated off to ponder what she had felt and gather her thoughts. Swar sniffed as he eyed his empty glass. Ma is always doing weird things, right, Farah? He called, and the goblin turned slightly at his call. Swar almost coughed as he saw the red rim to her eyes and a single tear to go with the runny nose. Are you crying? Swar said as he was pulled over the bar and out of sight as Farah knelt down. One word and I'll throw you to the pygmies as a cleaning rag, she hissed, blowing her nose in a rag. Calm down, jeez. What got you gobbo in a bunch? He grumbled as he sat up. I saw her, Farah faintly said. At Swar confused and looked and rolled her eyes. Ma! She looked into me and I looked into her. And Swar, she said, and the use of his name freaked Swar out more than the crying. Ma is beautiful. So much light and heart. So much she keeps to herself for our sake. Farah shook her head. She's a dungeon core. I bet she knows the secrets of the universe or things that'll break us. No big deal. We all know that, Swar said with a shrug. Farah smacked him. Don't be a dolt. Some things I saw, she began, and then both froze, as Nude floated above him. Some things you saw are better kept to oneself. Delta has many problems, and spreading them like a gossip isn't fair. The tone was frosty. Nude was like the cold earth to the warmth of Delta's sun. Hard and firm in his words, but reassuring as a leader. Delta was the brightest that gave them life. However, no offense, Menu, Ma can decide that, Farah said, and Swar shot her a wide-eyed look and answering back. Today is Delta's day off. Problems don't take holidays. She's constantly giving, and we don't give back. So, be like a Menu you are and keep your own business. If I want to talk to my ma, I will, Farah said with a hard glint. Delta allows much freedom in a dungeon, but acting too far out of order may still have consequences. Again, Ma can decide that. You need to get it through your system that Ma doesn't work like that. Consequences, sure, but Ma is fair, so stop acting like you're in charge. Farah slammed her fist down on the bar and everyone went quiet. News screen was blank for a long moment. What makes you think that I can't be in charge of you? The challenge was simple, but Farah leaned in unfazed. Because you waited until Ma left before speaking up. I think that says all it needs to, eh? She said casually and turned to make coffee. The box moved into view. I'm just trying to help her. Isolating her is a stupid way to do it. You think Ma wouldn't like to know that people want her to open up? For the smartest thing around, you really suck at understanding Ma, she snorted. You and Wym are becoming far too headstrong. It's worrying. Ma makes family and people. That means you have to live with some family that annoys you. and of something fierce. "Welcome to the family, Nu," Farah said and walked away. "I would like to be unadopted myself, please. If we could, I would do it to that idiot, but alas, we're stuck with each other." Farah jabbed a finger at Swar, who had his hand stuck in his glass mug. "My existence unravels to the meaningless pile of data strings every day here. Well, knit yourself some big boy pants and get a grip. Ma is a home and you're lucky to be here," Farah announced. Goblins cheered at this. "Nu," Ma's voice came from the tunnel. "Go and enjoy being her assistant. You have the funniest job around." Farah shooed off the box. "I do enjoy seeing her make physics and rules cry." Nu pondered that as he vanished, Farah wondering where the beings that controlled her very existence had come so emotional. It was good luck for Ma, not so much for Nu. The pools of honey around the bee spire hive were quickly becoming like a pond of 100 flavors. With every new flower or herb that Delta grew, the bees seemed to figure out a way to convert them into sweet honey. Watching bees snoozing like giant puppies was like the balm to Delta's soul. Watching the other giant bees zoom past on energy root infusion was worrying. She looked around but didn't find any honey pool or Delta blooms. Her bees were quiet enough without extra stingers or heads. Delta slowed and bit her lip. She was very tempted to give the bee some Fabio hair. The sight would be worth the potential world-destroying bee that she might create. Really, one little super bee would be no big deal, right? If the world could have Rudy and Quiz, surely Delta was allowed some scary things as well. She giggled at the thought and floated to the hot springs where Happy Rail and Giant were soaking in the streamy waters. "Truly, this has been the great day for frog kind. Your strength is a pleasure to test," Rail said cheerfully. Giant nodded slowly. "I will win next time," was all he said. Luna moved about with her robes and delicate gestures. She offered drinks to the frogs and smiles as Giant submerged himself in shyness. They all looked up at once Delta approached. Rail stood merrily and Delta closed her eyes. Rail was humanoid enough that there were things that she didn't want to see. There was a smacking noise and a splash. "Have some decency or you're bad," Luna chided at the submerged Rail as he flailed before bowing her head to Delta. "Heyo, Momo," she greeted. Her hostess attitude dropped to reveal her punk underneath. "How goes it, Froggos?" Delta waved back as she settled in on the edge of the female side. She felt her feet might be feeling some warmth. The mighty giant and the lord of the river, Rail, have clashed in the most wonderful tale. Her epic monster began before Luna cut him off. They hit each other until one of them fell down. It went on for ages, she summed up. Delta could see that happening. "I think the roots and herbs that I've been growing should be the things that you need for your key duty," Delta told the elegantly dressed frog. This got her a huge gasp of excitement and some hopping from the female frog. "Oh, is it a death bloom? Petal of 1,000 bites, devil kiss? Oh, the essence of a suffocating moon," Luna demanded with an unnaturally bright eyes. Delta, long looked, made her chuckle nervously. "Roots of nice hugs?" she tried. "Nu must have had a hand in your creation." Delta sighed good-naturedly, and she brought up the hot springs menu to see what was available. Hot springs soak away your weary bones and money, and allow a supply of variable herbs and oils for customers. These range from smelling nice to having slightly increased muscle relaxant. 15 DP. Allow Luna to flash boil customers who attempt to harm other customers. 30 DP. Allow Luna to set ambient string melody with the aid of Maestro. 10 DP. Enable the use of a special mixture of dream root, energy root, tears of wine, and rich royal honey to create a spiritual sap that, when burned, creates smoke that gives those who inhaled it a vision of self-discovery. Those who succeed will wake up with a key to the boss door. 30 DP. Add a jet bubble function. 15 DP. Allows Squee to sell hot spring tickets that opt customers out of monster trials and puts a limit on them moving up and down the floors. Violence will cause the ticket to crumble and summon an escort to bring them back to the exit. The escort will be the pygmies under Luna's control. 20 DP. Delta gave a long list a long stare. Some of those are... You know what? I'm just going to roll with it. Delta said aloud, and the frogs all stared in silence. I need to inform you that the pygmies will be given a little ninja outfits when summoned. Not sure why Source thought that you needed to know that. Newest confused box appeared. Delta purchased all of the things. She had DP for days and Luna deserved. Bubble jets and body lotions and just maybe some personal assassins. But Delta wasn't quite sure on the last one. There was a slight rumble on the stands, and the various lotions and herbal mixtures appeared, and even some bath bombs. Orange Tingle and Bee Knives, Maestro's Lullaby, and Fran's Courage were but a few of the named products. A little door was carved out of the nearby boulder with a sign above it that said, Employees Only. It was only big enough for the insects and pygmies to use. Delta was sure that she had been a good idea. Most of her ideas were good. Qui moved along the ceiling as more bundles of paper appeared. He sniffed at it and smiled. Nice. Auntie Muffet told him that he had a job now, and she expected grandchildren within the next 100 years. He flipped his growing hair out of his eyes and grunted. Muffet gave a sharp somber spins to him, and that translated into Don't sass me, young man. He gave a grunt shuffle, which he knew came off as rude, but he still went back to his nest and slammed the webbing shut. He put down the tickets and hoped that he would sell some soon. Having a job besides guarding would be fun. He looked up at the rough sketch of a dancing skeleton with a mushroom cap, something that he'd drawn himself. It was assigned by his hero, Maestro. He was going to become a star just like him. He hugged his web pillow close, and he rolled around on his bed with the idea of them duetting for Mum and Delta to see. He giggled quietly as his face lit up in joy. It would be a dream come true. They came with the setting sun, 6 ships that descended into the bowels of the dungeon. Grim took the lead with a grim expression. Remember, death or glory, he said with the group. Poppy yawned. I gotta get back before curfew, she disagreed. Amster held a bone staff and frowned behind his rimmed glasses. I have agreed to no such silly deal. It'll be success or go home, he corrected. Gammy looked around before she glanced back at the tunnel where the girl waved cheerfully, promising to camp outside for her. Success and or friendship. Dio is here to rule with a golden heart. The air rippled and Grim's eye twitched. He turned to the last member. Vass, any remarks? He asked through gritted teeth. I do not have a soul, per se, so death is mostly temporary until my master puts me back together. So I see no issue in your words, Vass said calmly. Grim turned to the dark tunnel ahead. Glory or friendship? He said with no energy. Team Holy Pot Hero, or whatever, was here. Grim supposed, if nothing else, he had a ranger to settle the score with. He licked his lips and his tongue tingled. End of chapter. That, my friends, concludes this episode. I hope that you enjoyed. If you wish to support the author of the story, there will be a link below. If you wish to support this channel, there are multiple ways to do so, which will all also be linked below. But the easiest way would be to subscribe and share my videos as much as possible. And until next time, I hope you all have a good one. And I'll see you all in the next video. Cheers.